What's up, everyone? Today we are checking out the Marshall SV20. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel, and thank you for tuning into this review of the awesome Marshall Studio SV20. This thing is phenomenal. This is a basically low-powered Marshall Super Lead, like an old Plexi. This has been around for a while, so this is not obviously a groundbreaking review. There are lots of reviews about this around. I just happened to get my hands on this one courtesy of my friend Jim. This is Jim. Say hi, Jim.
Hey, how are you?
We're good. Now, Jim, so he plays in my band. My band is called Jack Fossett and Friends, but I want to be clear when I say my friend Jim. It's not like a weird cult thing. I don't be like, this is friend Jim. Everyone say hi to friend Jim. Hello, friend Jim. No, it's like he's a friend, and it's a thing. It's just, we don't do that. You understand where I'm coming from. Anyway, he and I traded, and I got this amazing amplifier, and I'm really excited about it. I think Marshall has absolutely nailed not only this amp, but every amp in this series that I've gotten to try, and not just from a tone and quality perspective, but also just from a concept perspective. Now, this is not the first low-watt amp that Marshall has come out with. There have been loads of low-watt Marshall amps over the years, including another series of small amps called the Studio series. But what's unique about this one is, this series in general, is the idea of taking the classic amplifiers and bringing them down into lower watt, more manageable packages, basically. What I think is really brilliant about this is this shows Marshall's ability to adapt to a new era. Now, I recently did a video with a Marshall vintage modern half stack, and the idea of that video was kind of talking about whether or not half stacks have become obsolete. Now, they're not obsolete. They sound awesome. They still function the way that they always do. It's not a question of that. It's more a question of who is willing to bring them out when there are many other options to get good tone. Way more options than there used to be to get good tones. Whether you're talking about digital modeling or smaller amplifiers or whatnot, there's just loads of ways to get the tones that you used to have to get a big stack for. You don't need to anymore. So then it's kind of like, okay, well then do you just get it for the looks? Does it still do something functional that other things don't do? And really, again, it kind of comes down to what are you willing to lug out to a gig for a lot of people. Obviously, big cabinets have a different tone to them. They have a big thump, but how much is that unique sound worth to you? Well, what I think is great about this series of amplifiers, and this one in particular, is it really nails a lot of the tones that you want, that you hear in your head. It doesn't sacrifice the idea, the concept of what Marshall is. It's still a half stack in its own way, but it's much more manageable both in volume and in physicality. It's pretty easy to bring around. It's not really that bad, between the head and the cabinet. And there are also some really cool modern features that you get on this one that you wouldn't have gotten on the classic amplifier, like it has an effects loop, it has a DI out, and it also has 2 power modes, kind of going back to the volume. It's a 20-watt amplifier, but it also has a 5-watt low power mode, as well as still having the 4 different inputs. You've got your high gain inputs and your low gain inputs. And the crank tones you're hearing in this video are on the low power mode, and they were pretty manageable. Now, it's still pretty loud. It's still loud 5 watts going into the 212. But it's something that you could actually reasonably get at a lot of gigs. Even at 20 watts, you can get to some of that cool edge of breakup and mild overdrive territory in a natural tube amp setting to compete with the whole band, and then you can stack a pedal on top of that. There's just all kinds of ways that you can dial this in. The quality is phenomenal. These are made in England, and it's really versatile for, I think these old amps were much more versatile than people talk about. Obviously when you think of a Plexi, there's a very distinct tone that comes to mind, but they were capable of much, much more, and this one is no exception to that. Now, what I'm going to do is show you a range of tones that this amp can do. First of all, I want to say there are way more tones that this amp can do than what I'm going to show in the video, but just for the sake of time, I want to show you one of the most significant ways that you can change tones. Now, I have the channels jumped for this. That's one of the classic things to do, is to jump the channels. I've heard a lot of people talk about how these are great, but you got to get them to warm up and break up, or else they can be too sort of brittle sounding clean, which can be true. But I think one of the things is a lot of people really get blindsided by that first channel, that brighter channel. The normal channel, which is the number 2 channel, that one is the one that you want to focus on if you're playing clean. And so what I want to do in this video is show you a range of tones between plugging into the normal channel and plugging into the bright channel, varying the volume on each. Again, they're jumpered on the number 2 inputs there, and really show you how you can dial in some different tones. See, one of the things, people love to talk about this, including me, so I'm not criticizing, that the early Marshalls were based on the Fender Bassman, the earliest Marshalls that preceded the Super Lead. They were based on the Fender Bassman. And so there's always been a little bit of a comparison between early Marshall and like the Tweed breakup. In fact, Eric Clapton talks about this, how he switched over to a Tweed Twin because at the time they were made more consistently than the Marshalls he was playing. He said, well, he could get a Tweed Twin and it would always sound the same, so he knew what he was going to get. But he said he liked it because it sounded like the Marshall. There's a lot of kind of play there. Well, when you get that super lead tone, that doesn't sound like a Fender. That does not sound like a Fender Tweed. That is 100% Marshall. But if you're someone who's kind of on the fence about it, like, do I get a Marshall? Do I get a Fender? Focus again on the normal channel, because on that number 2 channel, you can get more of those darker Fender Tweedy tones, which I think is a really, really cool selling feature of this amplifier. It's not just that one sound. There's a lot of sounds you can get. You can get it to sound fuller and fatter and rounder if that's more what you're going for. And it's very, very easy to tweak. And I'm not even really going to change the EQ at all in this. I found an EQ setting that I liked for the guitarist that I'm using. I'm just leaving that the same. And I'm really just changing the input and the level of volume on each channel. So what I like to do is, generally speaking, and I am going to show you, you've already heard a little bit of plugging into the brighter channel and using that for more of the classic Marshall tone. But I'm going to show you them back and forth. So both cranked and just changing the input you'll hear. So in one, I'm going to play into the number 2 input all the way cranked, and then I'm also going to try it in the number 1 input all the way cranked, and you'll hear, just from literally switching plugs, you get a little bit of different character from the amplifier. But generally speaking, I like to favor plugging into the number 2 input, having them jumped. Now I dial up to the volume or the level of gain that I want with the normal, and then I bring up the number 1 volume really just to the point where I get it bright and edgy enough depending on the guitar that I want. And that kind of approach has really suited this amp very, very well. Because, again, if you go into that number 1 input with a Fender, yeah, it can be a little too bright and brittle. So go into the number 2 input and then just bring that up enough that you need for definition, and you can get really incredible tones with this amplifier. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to show you a bunch of different tones in various inputs with various volume levels, and I am also going to show you how it stacks with pedals. We're going to hit it with an Ibanez TS9 and also use an edge of breakup tone with a Stratocaster and then hit it with a Wampler Velvet Fuzz to get into some of that classic Hendrix territory. Now for the cleaner tones, I have it on the full 20 watts. For the fully overdriven tones, I have it on the low watt setting. So let us know what you think. Do you have any of the Marshall Studio amplifiers? Which ones do you have? They obviously make the head and cabinet version. This is the head and the vertical 212. There's also a 112 cabinet, and there's a combo amp that they make in these that come with 10-inch speakers. So there's a whole range. Now, if you're interested in this amp or any of the other stuff in this video, please do your shopping through the links below. Those are affiliate links. You know the drill. If you do any shopping through those links, it supports my channel. You get cool gear, costs nothing extra to you. So that's a great way you can support me and get cool gear at the same time. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Stick around for some more tone, and we'll see you next time.